It's always a pleasure to introduce Dr. Tim Feeney, Chief Knowledge Officer at Belvedere Health Services, a community-based rehabilitation service from New York State. A long-time, long-suffering supporter of Brain Injury Australia and of my work, because what he knows about brain injury has been tried and tested in the fire of working with people in the greatest unmet need for positive behaviour supports. Over the past 30 years, he has worked in a variety of capacities, including special education teacher, staff psychologist, assistant professor of special education, and director of a statewide program for individuals with autism. He has been responsible for procurement and coordination of over $10 million in grant-funded programs serving individuals with challenging behaviours, and has authored over 50 scholarly journal articles and book chapters. As director of the New York Neurobehavioural Resource Project, he supported individuals with brain injury and significant challenging behaviours to live successfully in their home communities at considerable cost savings to government. During 1996-97 alone, the project cost just over $200,000, but resulted in savings of over $2 million based on conservative calculations by external New York State Health Department auditors. And he has helped lead the world's first controlled trial of positive behaviour support right here in Australia with 50 community-based adults with severe traumatic brain injury, the results of which will also be shared in concurrent session 11 after morning tea. Please welcome Tim Feeney.
So, am I safe if I wear this? Is this good? I just didn't want to make anybody get sick, so I just wanted to wear it. Are you feeling better if I don't wear the mask? No? Okay. The other question I have, Nick, is am I in the right room? Given what you just said, I have a feeling like I should be in the red room, and I might be in the wrong place. So if I'm in the wrong room, can someone please move this, I guess, to the right room? Thank you for not having evaluations, because I'm sure mine will suck. All right, having said that, let's get started. Before we start, I swear a lot. I apologize ahead of time. I swear a fucking lot. That's a trigger warning. You should leave now. You should leave now. Because I am not in that room, I don't know how upset you will be, but I swear a fucking lot. Second, I talk really fast and I'm on Zoom, so this should be very interesting. Third, I'm an American and I want to apologize for America. I'm sorry. We kind of suck right now, a lot. And does anybody want a gun? Because we all have lots of guns and use them with great frequency. The other thing I want to tell you is that I know you're all smarter than I am. I know you're all more talented and skilled than me, but I'm the one that's going to talk. So suck it. Suck it. You know, I know you're a lot smarter than I am, but it goes, I guess I should say, I apologize for the previous bullet point. That was very unprofessional. But it's also a way to try to help introduce you to the notion of having a sense of humor. In the course of doing this for way too long, what I think is probably more critical than anything I'm going to talk about today is the idea of keeping a sense of humor. That will be sort of interspersed throughout this whole thing. The other thing I think is important to remember is I am not, or to give you an orientation, I am not going to give you, here's the 25 techniques that we know always work with people. As a keynote, I took that seriously to think my job is to sort of give you an idea of a way of thinking moving forward. I'm really thinking about how we think about the work that we do. And that's really the theme of what I want to talk about today. How do we think about what we do and what is the value of what we do and how do we really help people? So I am not going to talk, I will give you some things to think about in terms of things to try, but it's really about orienting ourselves to a way of thinking. So principles of good rehabilitation. First, person-driven intervention, not person-centered, person-driven. It's my life. I get to pick. Our job so I'm a professional, my job is to help people drive their life forward. For people who have a hard time figuring it out, my job is to help them figure it out. Our job is to help them figure that out. What that also goes with this notion of a tolerance for uncertainty and ambiguity. We're going to try things out. We're not going to pretend we know what we're doing, because most of the time we don't. We're going to work our best to accept the reality of the chaos that is many people's lives, our lives sometimes as well, and tolerate that and build our supports around the notion that what we would like to do sometimes doesn't match what we think would be the best, or what we want to do doesn't match what is available in the community, in the person's life. Context then is, again, an essential component. Ultimately, we need to think about what happens for us professionals long after we are but a bitter memory. So how are we developing meaningful assessments? Implied there is we don't spend a lot of time with standardized assessments. Standardized assessments are useful as a baseline. Standardized assessments are useful to return and understand if there's been any changes. Standardized assessments are good for making you eligible for services. The rest of the time, we don't spend a lot of time on them. What really matters is your friendships, your family, the place you live, the people who surround you. Another slide for these principles is while we have an idea what we'd like to do, resource availability will affect what we can do. So we need to account for what's available in the person's life. I cannot tell you how many times. So I've had the good fortune to be in your country a bunch of times. I've had the good fortune to go all over the place. And what I've seen so often is incredibly well-conceived intervention strategies, really good OTPT, all those kinds of things, but did not account for when they leave, all these resources are gone. 3 years from the time they leave the hospital, the resources are not available. So we need to be thinking about the resources, the real resources, and the lack of resources as we're deciding what's best to do to help somebody. Implied in that, again, is this notion of there's no single right solution. There's no model of it or an approach. We're agnostic. I would encourage you all to be agnostic. So the problem with professionals, we're all trained in a certain way of thinking, and that creates inherent bias. And because we have these inherent biases, that flavors the decisions we make in terms of what the person needs. When in fact, what worked with John isn't going to work with Kim, isn't going to work with Sue, isn't going to work with Tom. What's the point? We need to be open with this notion of ambiguity. We need to think about a framework, a way of thinking. And that's really what good intervention is about, helping people learn how to think. So, oops, what happened? My thing didn't go. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, first thing to think about, in the absence of meaningful engagement in chosen life activities, all interventions will fail. That is something that the late, great Mark Ilvasaker used to say all the time. We put it in print. It's a way, working with really difficult people. I have worked with very difficult people the majority of my life. And what do we know? What is common? And I'd argue for anybody post-injury, what is meaningful in my life? What are we as professionals? What are we doing? How are we helping people create meaning? How are we working around things that are meaningful to them, not just things that we think are important? Because what we might think is important often may not match what the individual and his or her family might think is important. So that means we have to figure out roles and activities, things to do each and every day, a reason to get out of bed in the morning. We have to think about the life wherever they live it, not, again, from what we think is an evidentiary-based intervention. A little note on evidence. Evidence is important. There needs to be some evidentiary base, but evidence-based practice is really about efficacy. What is the best thing under the best conditions? What I am talking about, good rehabilitation, is about effect. How is this helping that person that I am sitting at their dining room table, trying to help them figure out, or I am sending them on to their home in the absence of other services? I need to figure out what I'm doing to help them in the ultimate place they find themselves. Again, that is not rehab. That is not a rehab hospital. That is not a post-acute rehab. That is not a specialized program. So again, in the absence of meaningful engagement in chosen life activities, all interventions will fail. Okay, so let's think about reimagining this stuff. At what point we need to be thinking about things? At what point do we shift from focusing on rehabilitation and start figuring out how to live a life? Rehabilitation is often, especially physical rehabilitation. I am not saying, please, I know somebody out there is already angry. I am not saying nobody pays attention to that. But so often we are bound by our context and we think in terms of outcomes. I have this other life where I help insurance companies, believe it or not, figure out what's a reasonable way of helping and paying for services for people. And one of the things I always ask is, how are they helping people live a life, not how are they delivering excellent treatments? The idea, the hint there, sooner rather than later. I would argue I have worked in an acute rehab. From the moment they walk in the door, we should be thinking about how we're going to help them live a life that is altered, that we don't know. We can't predict what's going to happen. How are we going to work in a way that's going to help them move forward in a life absent us? So our job is to figure out how to balance between short-term recovery, whatever we're doing as professionals, is short-term, and long-term life. So what we're really talking about is a series of conversations. We're not talking about delivering interventions. We're talking about conversations with the person and the people in their lives to help us to construct our approaches, and again, in a meaningful way. Lastly, in terms of this notion of thinking about it as this reimagined rehabilitation, it's really about success in life is using what you got, not evaluating or measuring or figuring out or accepting what you don't got. It's what you use. So what I am encouraging you to think about is shifting from rehabilitation and thinking about habilitation. Rehabilitation, there's a whole bunch of words there that's taken from the National Association of Insurance Carriers. United States, rehabilitation is about restoring or improving. Habilitation is keeping or improving partially or fully. Again, what are we doing? And so what are we doing and how are we doing this? And start shifting our focus to HAB, the HAB in rehab, because HAB is life. Again, so we need to do more than people restore or improve functions. We're just a tiny part of a larger life. Our relationships are asymmetrical and short-term, that means we better work hard to establish respectful relationships with people. How are we relating to people day in and day out? How are we helping people figure out ways to live a life using whatever they have? Because ultimately, this is what our percentage, if we're professionals, this is the amount of time we're involved in somebody's life. Life is so much bigger than us, or whatever it is that you're doing, you are a small part of a larger whole. Our job is, rather than tell the rest of the whole what we think they should do, is accept and recognize and adjust our approaches to the realities of people's lives. And the other reality is, why should you be kind to people? I mean, really what I'm talking about is being kind. Because you have somebody's life and then there's that little dot of what you know. You don't know. We don't know the story of someone's life. I would argue good rehabilitation is helping people create a new story of their life, create a personal narrative in which they can be the hero in their life. We'll talk about that when we get to identity. But the notion is we only are a small part. And there are many people who have spent many years with people that post-injury don't really understand the whole. So again, what's assumed here? The quality of the relationships that you have with the individual are far more important than the quality of your brilliant clinical insights and interventions. The relationships that you have is what's going to make a difference in helping people move forward in life. There's another thing. This is actually from education. We are all smarter than any one of us. You can have the most impressive credentials in the world. You can work with people, but if you can't work with people, whatever you're doing is superfluous. You can have all the certificates on your wall, but if you don't know how to interact with people, again, it doesn't matter if you're an OT, a physio, a speech language pathologist, a neuropsychologist, you might be good at measuring things, but measurement's not as important as life, living a life. So within that, here's some conversation starters. Here's some questions that we try to integrate from the very beginning of the work that we do with people, that is going to demonstrate to them that we are being collaborative. We are collaborating. So first question always should be, how can I help you? You tell me how I can help you. You tell me what help looks like. I am not going to impose my brilliance, however it might be. That's for you really smart people. I'm not going to tell you what I think you should do, because this isn't cancer treatment. This isn't hard science. This is difficult. This is harder than rocket science. This is hurting cats. This is hurting feral cats. So the question becomes, I need you to tell me what help looks like. We need to negotiate what help looks like. And then my job is to frame what I believe you need through the prism of how we have negotiated what help looks like. We ask people, we ask this every person we work with, can you describe a good life? What is a good life to you? Paint me a picture, a 3D Technicolor picture. Dream big. For many people with brain injury, especially early, it's hard. It might be, as we like to think, unrealistic. That's not the point. The point is, my job is to listen to your aspirations and then help figure out how I can help you achieve those aspirations. Not simply say, well, you need to be realistic and accept the realities of your disability. Fuck you. Another sort of way of thinking about this is, that's a good question. Truth is, I don't have a good answer. let's figure out a way we can get to some answers. So the notion is we feel if we're not careful as professionals that our job is to make sure that we give people answers when they ask questions. One of the most powerful things that we all need to do, by the way, now we're shifting to family members and we're shifting to everyday people, is to be humble and recognize I don't know. And but I'm going to try to help you figure it out. What do you think? Another thing, somebody's got an idea. There's no such thing as a bad idea. No matter how cockamamie they might sound, no matter how weird it might be, no matter how out of the box thinking it is, that's an interesting idea. Let's figure out how we can test your idea. So ideas are empty. John Stuart Mill had a famous saying, theory without practice is vacant. Practice without theory is worthless. So the idea is it's good to have a theory. We want to have theories, but everything needs to be tested. And what we're thinking about that is, do I really have what I need? Do we have what we need so we can do that? You have a great idea, but do we have what we need to be able to do that? Sometimes we don't. We need to accept that we don't. It's okay. We're going to make the best out of what we've got with the tools that we have. So again, the next group, it's getting weird here. Okay, other conversation starters that are collaborative. I'm out of the prognosis building. Nothing's set in stone. We can try to make a plan to figure it out. Often what happens, people will say, how much longer? When am I going to get better? When will I be back? The mistake that we make is we do things like, well, in another 3 months, we'll know. We don't know. We have no clue. The best thing that we can do is say, here is what we're going to be looking for. And here is how we're going to evaluate if what we're doing is helping, but nothing is set in stone. We should not be prognosticating. Again, it's anecdotal, but the world is full of examples of people have micro lesions. I have worked with people with micro lesions in certain areas. They look fine, but they can't manage life. On the flip side, I have worked with people who have had complete frontal lobe obliteration as part of an accident, who are doing incredibly well. So we don't know. All the literature out there speaks of homogeneity where there is no homogeneity, speaks of practical or probabilities, not inevitabilities. So we can't speak with authority when we're looking at the life of the person, because let's go back to what I said before, we don't know the whole story. We don't know all the contextual variables. We've worked with people that are incredibly capable, that we have lots of hope for, but they don't have resource at home. They don't have support at home, or they have chaos at home, or they have massive dysfunction at home. No matter, and you can watch those people really struggle when we thought everything was going to be okay, because again, the contextual variables in their lives are often dominant in terms of seeing what the outcomes are. So it's not as simple as knowing how long was their PTA. That can be useful, but it's not sufficient. Nobody knows how long it'll take. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Oh, I missed the one. That didn't go the way I hoped it would. But what do we learn here? We're not talking about good, bad. We're talking about work didn't work. We're not talking about what are we doing to try to help somebody demonstrate X, Y, or Z. When things don't go the way that we expect them to or hope that they will, we need to acknowledge that with hope, and then figure out what we learned. Every failure is an opportunity to learn. The other thing we need to say, I think, express with great frequency is this idea this is going to be hard for a while. My job is to help you get through the hard stuff, but it's going to be hard for a while. And lastly, you know something? There's always something that works. We're going to figure it out. We just need to take the time to do that. So again, this isn't just me talking. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there in terms of the importance. It's called therapeutic alliance, whatever it might be. How are we collaborating with people? And there is a growing literature based, not just in brain injury, that last one on the bottom there, that's Liz Williams and just Douglas. The idea is, what are we doing? And what there is evidence out there across lots of different populations that the quality of our relationship is incredibly important to long-term positive outcome. So within that, we need to think about it. We're in the risk business. We should be asking the question, what's the worst that could happen? People have a right to choose. Now, we don't have the luxury of going into the idea of what is choosing and how do I learn to choose, but you have the right to sleep too late and eat too many donuts. You have the right to do all those kinds of things. The question is going to be, as people are taking risks, what is the worst that can happen? Because there is dignity in risk. Many of the folks that we work with, and in fact, we've written about this, have said to us, that you were the first people that let me sort of do what I wanted to. You let me try what I wanted to do and didn't give me 500 reasons why I couldn't do it. So anything short of somebody getting hurt, it's worth a risk. But you don't take risks in isolation. We have to talk about it. We have to get people on board about it. So it's not just, and if you're hiding risk, that's a bad thing. One of my favorite, it's from the book The Razor's Edge, Thornton Wilder, American author, that said it best: every good thing we do stands on the razor's edge of disaster, like that. This is a person. So I spent a good chunk of my life in a couple of different schools that we run. And this is a person, and I took this picture because staff came running in and said, "Oh my God, look where he is. He's going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt. He's going to get hurt." So I went out there and I said, I'll call him Zach. I said, "Zach, what's going on?" He said, "Doing my math." And he showed me and I said, "Okay, take it easy getting back down." People panicked. I looked and said, "If you get up, he'll get down." Yeah, there's a risk here, but there's a bigger risk in us trying to grab him and get him down. So we need to think about risk and accept risk. The other point I'd like you to think about is optimism. Hope and optimism are more critical than any clinical intervention. I don't have any direct evidence of that except 40 years of working with people. And here's what I know. Repeatedly, they say, "You folks were the first people who gave me hope. You folks were the people," and we have all our kids in our school. So I'm going to give you some examples of our school because our school just let out. And so it's in my mind. But again, kids, adults who are often surrounded by people who are worrying about what are the goals and have you made progress towards goals. I'm not saying you don't have to pay attention to those. You do have to pay attention to those because that's how you get paid. But if that's what you're looking at, you lose optimism. You become functional and a functionary. So optimism is a shield against despair. Now, I'm not saying, hey, everything's going to work out. But optimism is positive. Optimists are positive and hopeful. Here's what I know. Optimism is belief. Hope is action. And when we show optimism and hope, we're demonstrating to people that we do believe something will work, that we do believe that we can get to where we need to go to, and that we might not get there the way we'd like. And it might not look, the outcome might not be what we want, but we're going to continue to strive forward, especially in lives where people are isolated, don't see any progress, and often are stuck. Or in lives where people think, I was this and now I'll never be like that again. We'll talk about identity a little bit. So some example, optimism and hope, that is a hopeful act right there. That is I think it's a 50-foot wall. That person would not have started if they didn't have hope and optimism. Now, that person going up there spent much of his life in despair. And when we talked about what would you like to try, he would often say, I'd like to try this, and then he wouldn't do it. And then I'd try this, and then he couldn't do it. So then we had to have a whole conversation about why, what do you think that is? What's so hard about this? And then one day he said, I'd like to try this climbing wall that this is the super climbing wall. And he said, I feel like I can do it because I've made a plan and I know I can. And up he went, got all the way to the top. Another another indication of hope and optimism. This is 3 young ladies in our school. All 3 of them were told by all their friends, because they're terrible skaters. This is Vermont, so skating is a part of life. But when we framed it as there's no pressure, do you want to try it? Yes. They fell. What'd you learn? They fell. What'd you learn? They fell. What'd you learn? They fell. They said they wanted to quit. Well, maybe we need to wait a while. But eventually they got out on the ice and they all can skate. Now, they're not going to play professional hockey, but they had a sense of hope, because every time they fell, nobody said, well, can't do it. Now, they first said that, frequently said that. But no, we surrounded them with people that said, hey, that hurt. Why don't you take a break? What are you going to get back on? When are you going to try again? What do you need the next time? What they decided is they needed all 3. And again, that's an important point. We think about how are we helping people overcome significant barriers in their life in a way that gives them optimism and hope, and how do we give them strategies? That didn't work. What did you learn? That didn't work. What did you learn? What do you need for help the next time? What can we do differently? So every opportunity gets you to, now we have 3 ice skaters. The other thing I think is important is how are we bringing a sense of joy and humor to the work that we do? How are we bringing a sense of joy in the families that we work with? How are the family members creating sense of joy and a sense of humor? Again, what I've learned in the course of being stabbed way too many times, having guns to my head, is if you don't have a sense of humor, you're not cut out for this kind of work. So we spend our lives with interesting people doing interesting things. Oh, Mr. Fuckster is a funny name. That was a name that somebody gave me and everybody's horrified by it. But I kind of liked it. I was back in the days where you had to wear badges. So I actually made a badge that said Mr. Fuckster. Had some explaining to do when the Department of Health came in and did an evaluation. But again, that's funny. And so often we take ourselves so seriously. And we work in places where people with PhDs and MDs make people call them doctor. I get it. Okay, congratulations. You're the best. But I'm Tim. I'm Tim helping Aaron. I'm Tim helping Katie. Yes, I wrote this really long thing that nobody ever wrote. But my humanity is a critical element of the success or failure. If I don't have humanity, it doesn't work as well. The other question is, what's the big deal here? I mean, what is the big deal? We need to talk about big deals, but lots of things that people think are big deals are actually little deals. Going back to that slide, we're only a little sliver of life. And what happens is we think that that little sliver is so important. It is, but it is not the be all and end all. And then lastly, this is one of the things that we say all the time to the folks and the kids and the adults that we work with: embrace the chaos. It's chaos. But we try to reduce the chaos. And by embracing it, I think we can reduce it. So here's an idea of having a sense of humor. This is the sign in the front of our school. If you look, there's our shield, yay. Then there is the thing that everybody needs to have nowadays. You need to have a mission statement. So our mission statement is preparing learners for life. Put a lot of work in it. It's great, terrific, yay. The most important one is the one underneath it. That's the sense of humor part. If there's anybody out there who knows Latin, you already know what it is. I will tell you what it is in English, and then I will tell you what it is in Latin, and then you'll know why we say it in English. Non agere culus means don't be an asshole. That is our only word. That is our only rule. Don't be an asshole. It is actually on your diploma. As you know how everybody has their fancy saying, I've just lost the word. That's on your diploma. Don't be an asshole. That is both instructive and funny. It's funny because it actually shows up on your report card as well. Here's somebody else who's embraced the idea of fun. The problem is he's got a great sense of humor. He's running down 19th hole. I think that's hysterical. But there's two people on the right are not having fun. That's so often what rehab is. Somebody's out doing goofy things, trying things out and being outside the realm of what we think is acceptable within our practice. And we chase them down and try to get them to get back into our practice, which is really, really unhelpful and fracturing a relationship. So when we think about this stuff, we have to help clinicians get out of our own fucking heads. So some realities that we talk about when we talk with clinicians working with difficult people, working under difficult circumstances, don't worry about what other people think of you. Find your friends. You'll always find a friend. And the reality is they're talking about you when you're not there anyway. Fuck them. If you're not there, they're talking about you. It's fine. Fuck them. Who cares? I mean, whatever. Don't be afraid to look silly or goofy. People like people with a sense of humor. People like working with people with a sense of humor. There is a literature out there that is very persuasive. Like the more serious you are, the less people like working with you as a peer, and the less people who we have chosen to identify as patients or clients like working with you. They like to know that people are experts and they know what they're talking about, but they like even more to work with people with a sense of humor. There was a series of studies that were done at Brigham and Women's Hospital, and what they found was that lots of people, now that's one of the super hospitals in the United States, people will choose lesser credentialed and even less skilled clinicians if they like the way they talk to them and they have a sense. Don't worry about being right or wrong. You're wrong most of the time. That's cool. Don't worry about knowing all the literature because nobody knows all the literature. Now, you'll have people who have encyclopedic knowledge of literature, but it's usually a narrow band of literature. The real literature, the real evidence is the evidence of that person sitting across from you, what's going on there. And don't worry about your fucking scope of practice. That's one of the things I've learned in Australia. You guys love scope of practice conversations. What the hell is wrong with you? Great. Yes. I am not saying if you're an OT that you try to do neurosurgery, and if you're an OT, you try to give a Wisconsin card sort, or there are practice specific expertise that are skilled, and that's great. But the problem is when you start saying, I can't do that, one of the things in this positive behavior support project that Nick was alluding to, that was a big part of what we were saying is it doesn't have to be driven by a neuropsychologist. It's good to have one. It doesn't have to be driven by somebody who's a behavior specialist. Expertise emerges in context. We need to put ourselves in that position, and we need to support sometimes out of when we feel uncomfortable. That's that risk part. So an idea of being goofy, that is me. As you can see, I had, that's actually my actual hair. No, not really. I wish it was, because look at this. That is me coming out of a dunk tank that person put me in, because we all decided a fun thing, and by we, I mean they all decided that a fun thing would be at the end of the year, based on how kids did. They got so many shots at dunking Tim in a dunk tank. I will tell you this, the day was cold, the water was cold, and I went in 17 times. As you can see on the look on my face, I was freezing my fucking ass. But we had fun. We had a bunch of people that everybody said can't get together, all got together. It was fun, it was interesting. It was a way of creating camaraderie and collaboration with a bunch of people in our school, as I like to say, they're chronically cranky, with a bunch of people that people think, nah, they can't do it. You come together in ways when you're having fun with people. And the other part of this stuff is, it's funny, this came out, I think it was about 10 years ago, and I got emails from, I don't know, literally, I think 40 or 50 people that I had worked with around the world sent me this and said, I saw this and I thought of you. Everyone just wants to be liked and accepted, except for Tim. Tim doesn't give a fuck. That's not entirely true. Mostly it is. The point is, if I'm living my professional life by trying to A, keep the people we call patients happy, B, keeping their families happy, C, keeping the funders happy, I am living a really shitty life. Profoundly unhappy people are profoundly unhappy. I can't make you happy. My job is not to make you happy. My job is to help you to become the person you want to be. You might not like me at times. That's okay. My peers may not accept me at times. That's okay. What matters most is, can I demonstrate that we are moving forward in a way that resonates with the people, and it does have an effect. The other thing we think about this stuff is you can make people do things they don't want to do, but you pay a really big price for that. So if your rehab is this, you're doing something wrong. You know, the person pulling those two corgis is saying, it's going to be so much fun. You're going to have so much fun. There's going to be so much fun in the water. They're not listening to the corgis. The corgis are saying, I don't want to go in the water. I don't like going in the water. This isn't fun for me. And so often we try to convince people into doing things because we think it's going to help them, when we should listen when they say, no, I don't want to try it. Even if we think it's necessary, unless it's something that could result in physical or mental harm. That's different. So I'll give you an example of somebody who said, I am not going to force people. That is, I would say, can anybody guess what that is? You would say, whatever it is you say, I'm not there, so I don't know. That is a teacher teaching math. That is a teacher teaching math. Instead of forcing kids to sit in a class, we have our school dog who's hanging around while the teacher is laying next to the dog, petting the dog, surrounded by, you can't see, there's a bunch of kids there. As you can see, she's on a computer. They have Chromebooks, and she's delivering a math lesson. And as you can see, well, you can't see it, but those sunglasses are white heart sunglasses. And she's talking about math from the perspective of what is the cost? So the dog became the center. Dog's name is Jazzy. How much will it cost us to feed Jazzy for a year, knowing she eats X amount of food each day, knowing that the cost is X for that food, and knowing that there is inflation? That's a math lesson instead of forcing kids to the table. And think about that. That's, again, an example of kids. How many times do we have people that you need to go to this treatment because it's helping you, and they say, I don't want to do it. So the example that I always like to use is a young girl when I was working in inpatient rehab. She wouldn't go to PT. She wouldn't go to PT, and PT kept trying, and she actually tried to hurt the person. PT, she did it a bunch of times. So we looked and we tried everything. And then finally, her mother, we were just talking to her mother, and she goes, yeah, she really needs to work at this because she needs to be a cheerleader. And we went, okay, thank you. It wasn't PT anymore. It was cheerleading. I know that seems silly, and I know, but it's that kind of basic, not I'm going to make you do something, but how do I figure out how this matches who you are and what you want to be? So within that, fuck you in your report. That was one of my favorite things a guy actually said to me once, when somebody, didn't say it to me, to somebody, Yeah, I'm here. And what I find out is I do some ice breaking, so it helps us, establish rapport. Fuck you. I don't need your rapport. I don't need you to call me a patient or a client. As soon as you do that, it's asymmetrical. As soon as you do that, you're treating me as less. I have had the misfortune of having spent a lot of time over the last 4 years in hospitals, and it's amazing how I am not Tim anymore. I am patient number 738365, my birthday, and all kinds of stuff. People don't look you in the eye; they look at you as a disease. And the danger becomes and I know why we do it. It's easy to call somebody a patient or a client. That way you can keep therapeutic distance. And everybody talks about transference and countertransference and all that bullshit. Yes, we don't want to do crazy things. And there are people who are disturbed that do interesting things. But for the most part, I am Tim. You are who you are. Let's figure this out together. We need to establish respectful relationships from the very, very beginning, because I know we're going to be gone. So fuck you and your rapport. Part of that is, if you're looking for buy-in, you're wasting your time. Buy-in implies you're trying to sell something. Selling comes from Old English, and it was basically trying to trick somebody into taking something you don't want anymore. That was the original back in like 1340. If you're creating opportunities for collaboration, you got a chance in the long term. You're not selling. You don't want buy-in. If you're trying to do buy-in, you're not being collaborative. You're trying to impose what you think is necessary on the life of somebody who might be rejecting that idea. Whether you like it or not, the quality of the collaborations that you have is going to have a significant impact on the success of your intervention. This actually is one of the things that was found in that randomized control trial at Monash. It helps you generate interventions. You can generate better ideas and more interesting things to try and different experiments. It helps you with fidelity of implementation. If we're all trying this together, we're generating an idea, I know I have a place at the table. You might not take my idea, try it first, but I know I have a place. So if you're asking me to do what you want me to do, I'm going to ask you to do what I want to do. So I should give it a shot your way, because I know I had a voice. It also increases oppositionality and increases people's willingness to try things out. Because as we're showing collaboration and through our relationships with people, and we're demonstrating that we're listening carefully to people then start generating ideas. And it also gives you openness to feedback. One of the points of all this stuff is we need to go with our hat in our hand. That's an American idiom, I think. But the idea is, I go to you with my hat in my hand. I'm a guest in your house. That means you're going to give me feedback. I might not like that feedback, but I need to demonstrate to you through this process that I'm listening to your feedback. It's okay. And when I'm listening to your feedback, I'm also showing that I am wrong, and I am wrong a lot. And wrong is a good thing. Wrong is not a bad thing. I accept my wrongness. By being wrong, I gain a better understanding. By being wrong, then I can try more things out, because I'm open to my wrongness. I can change. There's actually a literature on wrong. And the literature shows the people who recognize that they're incorrect or wrong about something sooner rather than later accept feedback that allows them to see the error that they actually are more effective. They are more effective as police. They are more effective in the army. They are more effective as physicians. They are more effective as people who are volunteers at dog shelters. They are more effective. The literature is really interesting. They've done it in all kinds of settings, and it's the notion of recognizing an error. That's the Dunning-Kruger. That's where Dunning-Kruger really is. The Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't have time to talk about that. It's a well-known, well-established theory in psychology that to accept you're wrong, you need to recognize you're wrong. And the people who don't recognize they're wrong think they're doing great, and they're wrong. So again, we think there's some well-defined, evidence-based, often prescriptive approach. This is wrong. So to use Samuel Beckett, this is Samuel Beckett, this is from Wordsworth Hoe, his last book. It's 49 pages. Somebody in this audience probably read it and loved it. I've tried it 10 times. I still don't understand anything in it. But here's what I will say. The one thing that is a takeaway, it actually made a big impact on tech. Never try, never fail. No matter. Try again, fail better. That is what we need. That is a mindset that is going to make an impact on how effective and how engaged people are in their own lives. So other assumptions, what goes with that, we never give up. We're always hopeful. We work with difficult people, and we know it's difficult. That's okay. We expect the second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth ideas. Something will work. So this is a young lady that, as you can see, this is our sense of humor. That's her birthday cake, and it says, "I'm 17, bitches." Now, When we first started working with her at 14, the recommendation was she should be placed in a long-term residential treatment program, and it was going to be a residential treatment program for young women with serious criminal behavior and sociopathy. She's identified as a sociopath. She's not. She's 17, bitches. She's actually going to graduate next year. She works at a horse farm. What happened? We just kept trying and failing and trying and failing. And at some point, she said it in her just this last year, you know what I figured out about you guys? You don't give up. And I kept giving you lots of reasons to give up. Oops. Another example of always trying. So the person, those two people right there that is our school, that is our graduation. There was, by the way, we graduated 6 kids. You can only see there. One didn't show. One was there and walked off saying he thought this was bullshit. And the third person came, got his diploma, and hit the road. That is us getting in all the garb in a tiny little school. And that young man on the left, and both, the young man on the left especially, was, again, identified as having massive criminal behavior. He also had a brain injury, by the way, had 2. Criminal behavior, psychopath. He was called a psychopath. When he came to us, he was in a residential treatment program that actually threw him out for violence. He's a skinny little guy, but that's him getting his diploma. Because again, we applied this notion, we're going to try. And this is one of the greatest moments of my life. That is that young man and I having a nice big hug as I handed him the diploma that he worked hard to earn. So hope, again, optimism is a belief. Hope is action. Action comes by accepting risk. Action comes from working with people to create ideas. Okay. So another unspoken reality is once you enter into a helping arrangement, you're the receiver of services, you are no longer you. You are a patient. You are the guy with a brain injury. You're the girl with a brain injury. You're the man with a brain injury. You're the woman with a brain injury. You are the person with a brain injury. And if we're not careful, our behaviors reinforce that notion. And what we need to remember is people are so much more than their deficits or their diagnosis. So life is the everyday construction of meaning. There needs to be, again, a reason to get out of bed in the morning. That means our job is we're consultants. We're consultants in the construction of meaning. That also means we have to be collaborators. So it should be about helping a person get a life. It requires a shift from goals. Instead of goals, like I said, paint me a picture. Give me that, and then we'll create goals. We need to work on your identity. We need to figure out who you are post-injury. We need to develop a place for you in the community, a place that you belong. Belonging is so important. We need to help you learn how to regulate yourself. Eventually, you'll get to goals. So our job, again, is consultants to the person with a brain injury, the significant others in their lives, to the colleagues across all professions, and whatever clinical services they provide, great. They're part of this whole notion of creating identity. The way that our job is to help them remember this is the identity, not to come in and deliver a service. That's not what they do. We don't deliver service. We work with humans, and anybody else can make a difference. So again, we are trying to look at it from the perspective of the person, the way they're living. So here's some examples of people have talked about this. There's a Y-shaped thing. It's called the Y-shaped approach. That's who is it? That's Gracie and no, that's not Gracie. It's where is it? Oh, there it is. The last article there, they talk about the Y-shape. This is specific adolescent brain injury. But really what we're talking about is this: self-directed identity. This is ripped off from Georg Hegel, the late 18th, early 19th century philosopher. His was not quite this, but again, it's a rip off of his original idea. So when we think about it, the thesis is external control. That's where we start, external control. You have a brain injury and people tend to control you. Not because they're evil, but because it's the nature of rehab. You're in our hospital, you've had a brain injury, you're incapacitated, you can't do this kind of stuff. So you have this expert or external control. I will set your goals. I will make the decisions for you. You aren't able to make decisions. So that's one. There's the antithesis to that, or antithesis, which is shallowed person-centered. Hey, whatever you say, whatever you want. Good rehab is not about, you just tell me what you want to do. Good, the synthesis part is a combination of you're directing it, but you're organizing supports around goals that are important and choices that are important to you with the support of other people. So what we're doing is we're moving from external control. We're moving from, hey, whatever you want is whatever is good, man, because it is your life. And we're moving more towards you direct the symphony of people around you. Now, inevitably, somebody's going to say, what about people can't do that? That's why you collaborate with people around them. Because there are people in their lives that can figure it out. There are people in their lives where we work with people who are nonverbal, who are very, very injured, very impaired. And our job is to work with the people who surround them to help them think for the person and with the person who can't speak for themselves. So within that, John Dewey famously said, self is not something ready-made, but something made, but something in continuous formation through choice of action. So we are choosing our identities. Our job is to help people create a stable sense of themselves. What are we doing? How are we helping create a positive identity? Now, identity is an interesting thing. We all have different identities. For many people with brain injury, they have one. It's the person with a brain injury. So we need to invite everybody, like again, OT, physio, speeches, families, attendant care workers, to think about this identity. I'm going to give you two examples of the way that we try to help people construct identity in their lives. One is this notion of the old me, the new me, and the new me. What does that mean? For many people post-injury, they have a version of themselves that was this old me. By the way, it doesn't matter how accurate their interpretation of the old me is. That doesn't matter. What matters is their view of it. And we have this new me. This new me is the person that was injured. For many people post-injury, not everybody, this new me is something they don't like. It's imposed upon them because of an event in their life that they did not control. And it often, what comes with that is disability orientation and patient, and you are a consumer, you are not a producer. One of the biggest things, we don't have the luxury of time, is moving people from consumer to producer. What am I doing that helps me contribute to the world around me, not the person who gets services? That's the new me. The new me is often a combination of some of the old, some of the new. I can't change the fact that you had this injury. I can't change the fact that there's not a lot of people out here to help you. But what we need to do is figure out, create this new you, the person that you can get behind. So this is an example of a real person. His name was not really Dale. But again, his old me, he was independent, he was fun, he was loyal, he was hardworking, he was successful. This new me was the opposite. He was dependent, he was depressed. He was still loyal, but instead of being somebody that people look forward to, he was somebody who followed. Nick, you're getting up. Is that because you're running out in, what you call it? You're angry? You're leaving in a huff? Okay. So, and he's a patient. The new me that we tried to help him construct was the new me is, I have to have an impact on the world. I might not be able to do what I did before, but I want to feel like I'm contributing. I want to feel positive about myself. I want to feel positive about my contribution. I'm still going to be loyal. I need to accept help, and I need people to just think of me as just Dale. So again, how are we creating these new identities? And I'm going to give you another sort of Y-shaped way of thinking about this stuff, and that's their me, my me, and the me I want to be. Their me is the way other people think of me. This is one of the ways we talk about this notion of theory of mind. Again, there's all the things I'd love to tell you about, but we don't have the luxury of time. Their me is the me that everybody sees that I might not like. My me is the me inside my head that maybe everybody else doesn't see. And the me I want to be is the person that I want that integrates both their me and mine. So if we think about that, we think about, again, Jason, this is actually a real person. The other guy was a real person, just didn't change his name. I changed his name. I haven't changed his name. Their me is somebody whose brain injury, as he says, a fucknut, bad with people, an addict as well, and hard to be with. That's what he thinks they think of me. My me is, I'm smart, I'm a loner, I'm unappreciated, I'm always happy to be angry, I'm a victim of others, and I'm sad. The me I want to be, as I want people to see me as smart, I want to be recognized for what I can do. I want to be helpful. I want to be proud. I want people to see me as quirky, not as, a fucknut. I want to be valued. So what came out of that is specific projects. So he is working, and he still is working as an advocate for the marginalized. As he said, he's very involved with the LGBTQ community. He rebuilt a motorcycle for a friend of his, just said, I'll do it for you. And you don't know how to do it, I'll help you. He also is involved in rebuilding computers for kids. A lot of kids in poverty where he lives. So he takes parts and puts them together so kids can have computers. He volunteers at a brain injury support group. What's interesting, he says, I'm not a member of that group, but I go and make sure people know where they need to be. And then lastly, he's now becoming, I shouldn't say now, he's become a dog trainer. So again, how are we shifting to meaningful, important identity, sense of self? That is what we're talking about. It didn't matter. If you'll notice, I didn't say anything about Jason's specific disabilities. Yes, he did have an issue with addiction. Yes, he does have some pretty significant memory impairments. Yes, he does have some mobility impairments, but that's not the point. The point is, how do we fit it all together in a meaningful way? So again, good intervention is all about helping people to support that we work with to figure out this essential question. Why am I getting up in the morning? Now, everything I've talked about is the notion of competence. I need to feel like I belong and I have something I can do. I need to be related to others. I need to belong. I need to belong. I need to have some autonomy. I need to have meaning in my life and agency. I need to see that I am part of a larger whole. So I talked about this before. Are people going to be a consumer or a producer? Many people with brain injury are consumers. So there's three perspectives. There's the biologic perspective, which is producers generate material using energy from non-biological sources. That's what we should be looking at. Consumers get energy from eating other things. So we want to think about, how am I getting energy and giving energy? A macroeconomic perspective, that's Richard Thaler, a Nobel Prize winner, said producers make things, consumers use things. From a rehabilitation perspective, producers develop and try and adjust and adapt and collaborate and create. Consumers are expected to accept the services that are offered. Consumers have little social capital. Our job is to create opportunities for them to have improved and increased and important capital in the world, not simply take what we give them, not simply follow what's on their care plan, but give them opportunities to interact with other people in a way that's meaningful and personal in their lives. So I will leave you with some unhelpful and helpful questions, because I know I have 1 minute left. Unhelpful questions are, what's the diagnosis? Doesn't matter. How much do we predict they'll recover? I don't know. What is the prognosis? If you think you know it, you're full of shit. What do the assessment results say? I don't know. It's good for us to know them, but that shouldn't be driving our interventions. What are the recommendations that expert made? They're important, but not inevitable. Helpful questions are, what do we need to do to help this person find or create meaning or a meaningful activity every day of their lives? What's doable? What can they do in their lives? And then how are we preparing the people who will be with the person long after we're gone to figure out how to move forward in their lives to help them continuously create meaning and continuously create opportunities to interact with the world in a positive and, again, meaningful way. And with that, I am now 3 seconds over what you told me, Nick, so I apologize for that.
Thank you, Tim.
So, sure. All those boos.
I don't think I've ever seen you blush, but part of the clarifying brilliance of
It's
Tim.
not blush, it's my awesome shirt.
I was going to say, in the second slide, you didn't apologize for your shirt.
This is apologize. This is an awesome shirt. I got it just for you guys.
But just give me a moment to editorialize here, Tim. So I think that part of the clarifying brilliance of Tim Feeney is, and I've heard Tim present a lot, each and every time it's new, even though the content is often the same. And the other thing is that it's always like opening a window and meeting a welcome breeze. Are there any questions for Tim? I'm sure there are.
No. You're a bunch of...
Now, where have you gone? You've gone.
Aussies.
Come back.
Aussies. You Aussies.
Only because I've just got to preserve my energies. I'm hoping to have a second helper. Anyway.
Well, this is the biggest workout you've had in years, Nick. Walking up 3 there.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, Tim. Thanks for your presentation. Some really cool ideas that you brought up. Based on...
I'm just waving.
Sorry. Oh, hey. Based on everything you said, I just wanted to ask, in your experience, how much are these ideas more about getting the people that you work with on board rather than the actual individuals themselves that you're actually trying to collaborate with?
That is a great question. 98.6. Next.
Come on, you
No, I
you
mean,
could do
it's
better
a
than
terrific
that.
question. But, yeah, I mean, it's a really insightful question. You're right. One of the things that, sort of implied here is the problem is not the person. The problem is the people that surround the person. And so often we get trapped into this notion that our job is to, so I work with people with behavior problems. So it's like our job is to stop them from acting out. And that's not our job. And so we spend up, and again, implied in this is this notion that what we do is help the people who surround the person to look at their roles in a way that is collaborative. So yeah, again, I think Kate's somewhere hanging around there. Kate Gould and Nadine, as part of the positive behavior support, you can talk to them, and they would tell you the majority of the work. And I don't think Kate, if you're scream no if I'm wrong about this, but the evidence was that was where the biggest work went, with the people who surrounded. That's what often had the largest impact. Key others, us helping them move the needle, made a huge impact on the life of the person that was identified as the person that we were supposed to be helping. Now, we did direct work with the individual, but almost as much work went into working with people around them, because, again, it didn't matter. So, Kate and Nadine are terrific clinicians. I sit back and I look at them and I go, how do you know how to do that stuff? But it wouldn't matter if it was only them, because they leave. We're out. We're gone. So we need to spend time with the everyday people, whoever they may be, whether they're paid carers or family members or neighbors. So yeah, 92.4. I just changed. The data just came in. 92.4% of the work.
Hey, thanks for the, hello. Thanks for the great talk. That was great. I resonate with everything you say. Sorry?
You were going to say, but? No, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the things that I try to do is help younger people, maybe 18 or thereabouts, and a lot of them have chronic fatigue and comorbidities and things like that. They'll walk in and I spend an hour saying all those similar things to what you say. Like I say, what's your dream life? In your fantasy, what would you do? Blah, blah, blah. And it's even hard for them to give themselves permission to dream that big sometimes. They can be so suppressed and so affected by their past experiences that it's almost like they don't want to go there in case they let themselves down. And it's such a careful territory, and I get stuck because without them being willing to investigate who they want to be and the life they want to design, how do I help these people? How do I set goals? And I write these letters, and I hope they're very good letters, but they're not hope, they're not action, they're not doing, and I just feel a little bit like, I wish I could do more. So do you have any advice?
Have you thought of a different profession?
Tim.
That's me being American. No, so let's think about this. That is right now I spend the majority of my life with that very group of kids. Here's what I will tell you: is they don't believe it. They don't believe it. They don't believe it's possible. And again, I'm making a gross generalization, but they often just don't believe. When we talk about think about your possible selves, they are stuck in the day-to-day moment, thinking at the end of their nose. Here's what I do. I get through today, and then I wake up tomorrow, and I get through tomorrow. And you're telling me think big? I've had just small my whole life. And what I think that if you think about it, the possible self, so you think big, and it takes a while. Again, we have 2 schools full of kids. It takes months before they finally start opening up to the possibility. Why? Because this is a bunch of people that when something good happens to them, it's like a happy accident. They don't see themselves as instrumental in their lives. They're sort of everybody else's, they're just, they're the subject to the whims of the world around them. But the more we work and show them, when you do this, this happens. When you do these, so in our school, like, hey, you noticed that you hadn't gone to class and you haven't done what you need for math. Not like you need to go to class. Why do you think that is? What's going on? Once they start seeing that they can be instrumental in their life, so dream big. But once you get the big dream, then now when you think about what are we doing today? What are we doing today to help you get to there? And if you can't dream big, let's get through this week. What would be a good week for you? Let's get through this day. We get to the point, we get like molecular. What do we need to do this next half hour so that you feel like you've achieved something? And by doing that, they start connecting, they connect the dots. This happened and this happened. And they can see that they are, again, they have agency, because we have a whole bunch of people. You're describing the group that has no agency in their life. It's like everybody else. I'm talking to you because someone's making me talk to you. I'm not here because I want to be. That's a common thing we get in our school. I'm not here because I want to be. I'm here because somebody made me come. So we say, okay, let's think about, let's get through today. Let's think about, do you want to get back to your regular school? Maybe it's that. Not so you think the big, you continuously think big, because I think it's important for us. But then you bring it down to the today. What am I doing today that I'm going to show you how you can have agency? And by accumulating those opportunities for agency over time, I start feeling like I have intrinsic value. Now I can start thinking big. Again, big's good, but we have to bring big down to the moment with individuals and show them how they are instrumental in their lives, because then they can start. I don't know that helps, but here's what I can tell you. We've worked with 80-something kids in the last 4 years, and we have been unsuccessful with 5. That's a big number.
Please thank Tim Feeney.
I can't hear you clapping, so it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do that. You can give me the finger. That would be cool.
Enjoy morning tea. We resume in half an hour's time.
Speak for yourself, morning tea. It's the freaking middle of the night.